So then, NASCAR at Richmond. Let's go through this. I'm going to go through the story of the race, the playoff picture. Well, before I do the playoff picture, the penalties, then the playoff picture, and then a little bit about the Tyre Debate, because all of this drama and that spectacular finish kind of overshadowed what was meant to be the big debate about this. But let's start off with the story of the race anyways. So the race picked up from where he left off in the wet to dry spring date, with Hamlin and Truex battling out to lead the pack. Toyotas appeared to be at the front throughout stage 1, which is funny given, it's a sponsored TV event by Toyota on the USA Network. And then contacted the 40, and this is something that I picked up from the stage break, which was not good for Toyota. Contact between the 43 and the 20, where Bell turned Jones under the end stage caution. Nearly ended up turning Gregson in 10 as well. I heard them broadcast saying that the 20 didn't have the crew chief this week, or regular crew chief, which is why you wouldn't see the kind of urgency for that to be called out. For stage 2, so Suarez is the first to grab all the options alongside McDowell. He charged well up into the top 10 in the early phase. By lap 90 of the race, he was challenging for the lead. By 93, the 99 goes around the outside for the lead, and then 10 laps later he has 3 seconds over for Bell, and then I think in the next 10 the gap halves. McDowell himself peaked at 7 before the tyres started to drop off. Bell pitted first, strangely enough, kind of undercutting Suarez, but they were side by side anyways, within a few laps. The strategy became about overcut and undercut versus the tyre choice as a result. Larson and Reddick went late with their stops, but didn't go with the option tyre. I think they went 20 laps later than everybody else. But the biggest loser was Truex, who suffered with a tyre winner attach, but I mean, that was the worst thing, because in the last Richmond race for Truex as a full-time Cup driver, his motor blows at the start of stage 3. Let's talk about stage 3. So at the start of it, Suarez is the only top 15 car without the options on. Same thing that we see in overtime, because he only had one set left. Delaney lost out around the 280 mark because of a pit stop. I think a tyre wasn't attached as well. But at the same time, 2 people lost out even more. Bowman and Bell both get caught speeding. Suarez was 9 seconds clear at the front at one point on the old prime tyres because of the switchover window. But in the middle phase, that's when we start to see Austin Dillon come into his own. Some kind of adjustments in stage 3, or maybe even also the temperatures really serve well for the 3 car. Which, in comparison to his teammate, who was struggling just off the lead lap with the injury to his wrist, we saw him getting the scissors in, trying to cut away part of the cast. It's so bizarre to see, especially when someone like Kyle Busch is struggling so much. But one of the things I noticed was between lap 100 and lap 300, the Toyota domination kind of worn out. At first it was something like the top 3 or 3 of the top 4. But in the end, there were only 3 in the top 10 by the late phase. With 28 to go, Dillon finally clears Hamlin and then ends up getting really clear. But 2 to go and we get our first natural caution of the day, and it was Ricky Stenhouse. Lots of people are memeing on it. Into turn 1, as the 41 of Brees started to go down, the 47 sort of holds his lane, sort of understeers, just piles into the back of him. And yeah, Dillon and the 3 team got the pit stop right, but got the restart wrong. And then we all know what happens. He rifles Logano from multiple cars lengths back and then hooks Hamlin into the wall and takes the win. And then, of course, come the penalties. And this is part of why I was happy to be holding off, because we were meant to hear about it on Tuesday, then got pushed back to Wednesday to the point where I couldn't really record a video on Wednesday once the penalties have been released. No RCR plan to appeal it, but essentially Dillon gets docked 25 driver and owners points, the win doesn't count him as playoff eligible because he essentially broke a very vague NASCAR rule. And yeah, he loses his crew chief for 3 races. As far as I'm aware, RCR is still serving the 3-race suspension for the crew chief, but the appeal they're doing now, and it will be heard by an independent panel, I think, at some point before sub 500. At the very latest, before the playoffs proper begin. But what do I think about it? I mean, I'm also overshadowing the fact that Johnny Logano got a 50 grand fine for revving up his engine in front of Dylan's family. I mean, there's all the comments about should his family have been on pit road, but it's something the NASCAR and the broadcast do to get like the whole family to celebrate together for the big spectacle. I think there should be definitely something more though about safety in terms of getting people onto a live track or a live pit road. There should definitely be more about that. But I think the penalty was deserved. I mean, I know I'm a European motorsports fan, but I'm a BTCC fan where we see lots of beating and banging people being run out into gravel all the time, up in this racing. But what happened there is wrong. I mean, he hooked Hamlin into the outside wall. I know Richmond isn't Charlotte and it isn't Vegas, but Elliott and Wallace were both parked when they hooked their targets into an outside wall. But let's talk about the playoff picture quickly, because what it had meant was that Bubba Wallace had pointed his way in, despite Dylan winning. Now Chastain is above the cut line and Busch is below it, but they're tied on points, so it's all to do with countback. But 3 points separate those 3 drivers. Ty Gibbs is now only 15 points ahead of Wallace. And Truex, despite a blown motor, is still pretty clear. I think 78 points to the good. Essentially, all but guaranteed into the round of 16. But what I found funny was Dylan was 32nd in points heading into this. He had 2 top 10s all season. I think on points, before the penalty he climbed up to 26th. After the penalty he's dropped back to 31st. So if the penalty stands, what he did was he did all of that driving through people to gain 1 point in the standings. Which, that sounds weird. But let's end this with the tyre debate. I think the tyre was a fantastic thing to try out this particular points paying race, having been demoed at the All-Star race, and I think it got demoed well earlier this year. We saw great strategy coming in with Vidal and Suarez charging up in the mid phase of the race, and then Christopher Bell and Kyle Busch, who finished on the lead lap at the end in the late phase. And because we already had the 1 natural caution, they all sort of happened naturally. I mean, stage breaks are still a thing, but we had natural strategy games playing out. Like, you could have had more if you had more cautions and if you had competition cautions, but I'm kind of glad we didn't. It creates new narratives, new stories, new things to follow. It splits the stages up a bit more because you have the drivers trying to use 2 different compounds of tyres and trying to maximise when they can use their option tyres. Now what I would argue is this is another way that NASCAR could spice up their all date tracks in the future. Arguably right now it's only proven to be helpful on the shorter or flatter tracks. So, I don't know, Phoenix? Martinsville, maybe? New Hampshire? Gateway? I mean, I don't think Darlington would be great. But in terms of mile and a halves, Nashville perhaps, right? I think Nashville could be one that, if you gave it a second date, could be an interesting experiment. Richmond is a great a great venue, because you can have two great races like we did this season. One was wet to dry and one was multiple compounds. But what I would say is they should have these options available, so we can have, say, 2 different Martinsville races on a Sunday rather than Saturday and a Sunday. Also, Richmond can always run through an evening. Also, that each Phoenix race can stay with the 500 denotation. Because I like when there's variety between the different dates. I think that's the big thing, is if you are going to have 2 dates for a track, there has to be variety. That's why I'm such a big defender of the Roval, because it's so different. I enjoyed, because the first season of Cup I watched was 2021, though we had a road course race at Daytona as well as the 500. I thought that was a brilliant thing to do. I think that's the kind of thing that you do need to do, because otherwise, whilst you might get your value for money as an organiser, as a circuit out of it, it doesn't maximise the experience of the fans. But those are my thoughts. Let me know yours about the tyre debate, about the penalty debate, about the race, or about the championship itself at the moment, in that comment section down below. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you again soon. Bye for now.